Have you ever had a secret desire to be an author? Perhaps you've had a life that's, let me say, a little bit interesting that nobody knows about. And you've often thought, I wonder if I should be writing my stories down. On today's podcast, you're going to love my guest. Kez Wickham St does this. She helps women tell their stories and is a great proponent of the fact that us as wise women should be telling our stories. You're going to love this podcast. She was so interesting to talk to, full of wisdom, and I hope it inspires you to maybe start jotting down your stories to share with your children. Let's get on to the podcast with Kez Wickham St George. It is my absolute delight to speak to wonderful Kez Wickham St George today. I'm just going to share a little bit of Kez's bio because it's quite extraordinary, and then I'm going to let her explain to us all how she got to where she is today. So she's a publisher and a 5-star gold award-winning best-selling author. Oh my gosh. With multiple best-selling books and 8 prestigious Gold Titan Awards to her name. She's a literally force to be reckoned with. Yes, you are. Her storytelling prowess has earned her numerous accolades and recognition in the literary world. Welcome, Kez, to the Mid-Life Reimagined podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here. And Kez is coming from Perth, Australia, and of course I'm in Vancouver. But podcast has numerous accents. I had a gal from Scotland last week. I had a gal from Ireland this week. A girl from South Africa. People are getting a wonderful plethora of accents.
Yeah.
Kez, your bio reads incredibly. And I know as an author myself, the challenge of writing a book and marketing and getting to bestseller list. And before you go on to talk about what you do now, can you share with me, how did you get to this point? What was it that drives you to be a best-selling author and award winner?
I guess I'm quite competitive, really. I never thought I was, but my world started off in New Zealand as an artist. And I used to do scribbles, like join a writing class, write a paragraph, think it was a hoot and move on. And then I discovered poetry. And so with all my artwork that I sold, I would add poetry to it. Like it was a gift to the client that have a poem about their artwork. And what inspired me. And then I just sort of came over to Perth, came here to live. And my husband came to work, and sort of I said, well, I'm never going to work again. And it was like I sent out a challenge to the universe, because work I did. In New Zealand, I'm a trained creative artist and a therapist. And so I went to work in a place called Trinity College here in Perth. And I was training and I was teaching the basics of aromatherapy and like hand and foot massage, what it can actually do for your body. And I was asked, the writing teacher had taken a couple of weeks off, and I was asked, would I go in there and just keep an eye on people? They knew I wrote poetry, but I couldn't say I was an author. So I just said, yes, I'll go in there and make sure that everybody's behaving themselves. I'm an ex-teacher myself. I got out the ruler, everybody writes. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of I can speak through writing. So I joined a writing class and I joined a speakers class. Perth was this is going back 20 years. So Perth was still very quiet and very unknown then, really. Very busy these days. But it really started off from there, and I grew. I just realized that if I wanted to use my voice, and I was already I was 54 then. So if I wanted to use my voice and keep on encouraging other women, which I've always done, to do art, then this was another way of doing it and getting your voice to be heard. And actually, it's not so much your voice to be heard, but it's sharing your wisdom. It's we all grow up to a certain age and we all think to ourselves, so much to share, but who do I share it with? Or the kids will say, Mum. You're left with the echo of, oh, Mum. So, yeah, I started writing, found I loved it, produced a book, and she sort of went nowhere. And I wasn't very aware of what, where, or how to put your books. I had no idea. So I decided I was going to make something of my writing world and my art world. I'd have to combine the two. So I created a few covers. Then to the cover, I always relate to art and photography, or my whole heart will make a story around what I see. So I created a few artworks. I then wrote the story behind the artworks, sent them off to a publisher. And again, it was like, well, I'd love to publish it. It's going to cost you this much. And it was like, gulp, okay, I'm not working anymore. It's going to cost you a lot of money. And so to get that back, I had to sort of ease myself back into the working world of being an artist again. But about, I'd say 10 years ago, it all just met in the middle and I was quite comfortable. And it was, I actually wrote my first really serious book, which was Little Mermaid. And it won accolades. And I thought, if I can do that for one, I can do it for the others. So away I went. Not only that, I found ways of introducing myself to the world that I didn't know. So I wrote to 2 royal families and I wrote a children's story and sent books off to 2 royal families, one in England, which was then Queen Elizabeth days, and then one to Princess Mary, who was an Australian in Sweden. And they both sent me back beautiful letters, and the letters came, I don't know why I was so impressed, but the letters came like gold emblems and beautiful big gold and red stamps and little ribbons off them. And I thought, I'm being honoured here.
Yes. Yes.
So I had to really take that on board, that people were enjoying my words, people were enjoying my writing, and let's make the most of it and encourage other women, if I can, that we don't have to sit at home and think, oh, well, I'm 60, life's over. I found that after when I turned 60, life was even more exciting for me. And I was out there doing stuff, being welcomed into different situations, and when I went to Dubai, I went to Bali to visit family, but they were actually working for the royal families over there. So sitting with the royal family, having dinner, eating off gold plates, and I'm not joking, eating off gold plates. And I'm thinking, who am I?
Yeah.
Just who am I to be doing this festival? But they were just like the normal Joe blogs. They were very friendly. They were lovely. Okay, they showed off their wealth, yes. But they made me feel so much at home, and they encouraged me because they said not too many women were sitting at home being ignored. So that's how I began writing. I became a bestseller and an award winner. And then after that, I just keep applying for these things. I send my work in. I'm awarded. But my mainstay is helping other women write their story.
So
I think it's
what genre did you mostly write in the beginning? Was it mostly children's books, or was it more of the stories around your art? What were the books that?
the ones that I wrote, first of all, were purely fiction, and they were a story about a woman called Tara, and they were, to what I write now, they were quite simplistic, if you can understand that. It was like, been there, done that, don't want to do it again. Whereas when I understood the theory of writing, that you are a storyteller,
Yes.
and to be a storyteller, you've got to dot your I's, cross your T's, and finish the sentence, so to speak. So I got very serious about it, very serious. And it just came naturally. When I applied my own thoughts about it, it just came naturally. When it came to the first 3 books, I took the first 3 books and I married them. I married them all together, and I took out the bits that were a bit fluffy and made it more serious. So the adult senior woman could say to herself, either I'd like to do that, been there, done that, or I'd like to try it. So it was all about travel. And I've traveled all over the world now, but then it was about traveling Australia and how much I enjoyed meeting so many people. Once people learn you're a writer, I don't know what it is. We get out the caravan, we light the campfire, and they're like moths to a flame. Let me tell you a story. And I love it. I never tell them who I am. I never bother. I don't have to, because they're telling me their story. And then I say to them, well, look, I'm a bit of a writer. Do you mind if I use your story? And they say, no, they're quite proud of it. And I get their address and I send them a book. And yeah, it's a collaboration, I would say.
Yeah, and isn't that wonderful? I think listening to you speak, we all have a story.
Yes.
And often I think we can compare them to others. Mine's not that interesting, but women in particular, and men, but women in particular, as they move into that past 60 and 70, all have a story. And I've often come across women that will sit and tell me their story, and I'm like, that's
Yeah.
book. You're kidding me. That just the things that many, I want to say ordinary, women that think they're kind of ordinary, just get on and do. Something comes out of it. And those stories, we don't do enough of that, I believe. Sit around and tell stories. And when my, when your grandparents passed, you was, oh, I wish they'd written that down. Like, I wish they'd told that story. My father was a historian, and he wrote a book, and he was 85 when he released it. And the amount of work that went into it, but he actually never told his story. And it's a shame now he's passed, and we got to pass those stories on to my grandchildren. And I'm pulling memories out of my brain all the time to try and remember what he said. And I think it's so powerful what you're doing is sharing those wonderful stories with people about everyday Australians, really, everyday women.
Yeah, everyday woman. My last book, Tapestry, was very powerful. I actually put everything into it. I could have sworn I had a muse in the room with me, because the memories of a child coming back were things I hadn't thought of for years and years and years. I had a really good childhood, but we were, I'd say, on the borderline of being poor. We certainly weren't rich. Mum did all the shopping, secondhand clothing, budgeted on the food. And I was born at the end of the Depression days of the Great Depression. So I was brought up to respect knowledge, respect what's around you, and if you can, use what's around you. So, I passed that on to my kids. But my mother ran a woman's circle, not knowing what she was doing. And so Saturday morning, all my aunties, I'm part Maori, so all my aunties would come in, and mum's sister and mum's sister-in-laws would come in. We'd have about 10 women around the table, and they'd literally, and I was very little. So I was like mum's last gasp of having a baby. So all my sisters were in their teens when I was born. So mum didn't know quite what to do with me. So I was put under the table on a pile of under the kitchen table, pile of cushions, colouring in books and pencils, and even to this day, I can remember whose feet belonged to what face. I was surrounded by feet and toenails, more so to speak. And it was like I would hear their voices tell the story. And the ones that impressed me the most were mum's sister. And so I was dredging up all these memories. And as I was writing, Sally, I could remember the faces as well. The faces and the voices were coming to me. Nothing was easy in those days. And yet nobody really moaned about it, because that's how life was. That's what they did. And well, they thought they were very modern. If you had a washing machine with the old mangle wringer, you were modern. You were with it. Just think I just go and press a button and walk away.
Mum telling me when they put the Hills hoist in the backyard.
Got Mum.
Well, that was a big deal, right? The Hills hoist.
Yes.
That was 1963 or something.
Yeah.
It might be 1960, and that was a big deal. And you're right. In those days, everybody was the same almost. It's like I go back and think of my family. I come from a big Catholic family in the Lord. So I love the story of sitting there, because I do the same. I wasn't under the table, but my mother had 6 sisters. And so when they'd get together, the stories they would tell would be just wonderful. But it was like no one wanted for more. It was like it was quite, when Mum and Dad bought the house, 3-bedroom house, they bought the house in 1955. Everybody had a 3-bedroom little tiny house on a quarter acre block. Like nobody had anything, at least in our world. I love the stories and how you talk about them. And so now, how do you support other women? Are they anthologies, or how do you?
A lot of women come to me and say, look, I've got a story. And what I do is I mentor them. Now, they can be published through me, or they can find their own publisher. And I often guide them off to who I think they will do better with. But I love to mentor them to get their story correct. Now, I'm not talking about dates, times, and places here. I'm talking about the correct language to use in a book. You can have women of my age, and I'm in my middle 70s now, that they talk in a way that is not superior. Whereas I will find a woman in her 30s using her training in a more superior attitude. I say, no, I ask them to back off. Just back off. Think who you're talking to. Think of the experience. And now, actually tell me your story without the digital world stepping into it. Yes. Tell me your story. And it's really important that we forget it. I know it's important that we are digital these days, but you weren't digital when you were born. So Tell me your story. How did you feel as a kid? And so I get right underneath, I get into the blood. And I say to them, how do you feel about telling me that? How are you going to? The older women are fine with it. They just burble away and tell me all their story, and I'm really happy with it. But the younger ones, they haven't lived such a grounded life.
Yes, I
And we
guess
were very grounded
we were.
as children. I don't know about yourself, but I would say hearing about your age, that you were also, nothing was taken for granted.
No, well, mum was a refugee from Papua New Guinea. You know, they left everything behind,
Yeah.
and she grew up until she was 10 years old, never wore shoes, had an idyllic life, and then the war happened, and they had to move.
Mm.
Mum was very, very. I mean, we hadn't. Mum and dad weren't poor. They owned their own home, but there was not a lot of money. And 5 kids,
Mm.
like schools. And we had a school uniform, sports uniform that we wore. Mum and dad that's the one thing they made
Yeah,
us all do was sport. And maybe 2 outfits to wear to mass on Sunday. That was it.
that's right.
And I think you're right. It makes you really grounded. You know, we didn't have options, so we made our own. Just mum
That's
made
right.
all the clothes and all that stuff. Yeah, it was a different time to grow up in that mum and dad were both post-war babies, and so their upbringing, very cautious about money,
Yeah,
very, very,
yeah.
get a job, stay there, just until you retire. And, I was the one to kind of break that belief in the family. But it's interesting, isn't it? I love how you say that, though, that there's, is it, I mean, I think one of the biggest things we're all coping with at the moment is AI. And so how do you balance that, do you think? I mean, I think personally, it's about showing up and telling your story because no one can
Mhm.
make it up. But from a writer's perspective, that must be challenging at the moment to separate real writing from AI.
You don't have to. You really don't have to. Like if I'm writing a business letter, I'll put it into chat because I like to take the emotion out of it. And so
Mm.
I'll put it into chat. I think, well, that's brilliant. I'll have that. Thank you very much. So, but if I'm writing a book, it's my words. I truly believe that. My recent book that I'm writing now, called The Dream Weavers, when I was in Paris, I was introduced to a perfumery. Now, the perfumery was in an 18th century cobbled road, and I could not for the life of me remember the description I wanted to use because it was a very 18th century. And
Mm.
so I put those 2 sentences into chat, and the description that came up was exactly what I had seen. Exactly, because they hadn't changed the road. It was still cobbled. The little old black doorway, you had to stoop to get in because, we forget that people were a lot shorter way back then. We didn't grow as tall. So I had to stoop to get in the doorway. It wrote the description. So I used the 2 sentences in the description so I could bring the prologue more to life.
Mm.
I will do that. But to write a book, no, I think that's cheating.
Well, it doesn't
But
write it in I mean, you can get it to a certain point of sounding like you, but I'm noticing a lot now on social media when people are just putting up blogs or posts and like, that's just AI. We don't talk
yeah,
like that. We don't do those 3-word sentences. Like, yes, do it in business letters and have it word, but I just find it, I'm seeing it a lot at the moment, and you can pick it up.
mm,
I
mm,
mean, I can. You probably can too. I was reading your website, your new
mm,
one, and there's a part in here I wanted to share that I really loved. I'm going to ask you more about it. You said, when rewriting my own website was a daunting prospect. The task seemed immense. How could I possibly capture the essence and subtle victories that often go unnoticed? One that encouraged deep self-reflection, renewed appreciation for the power of my own voice. That's so beautifully written. I just love that.
thank you.
And then you talk a little bit about, how do you, picking apart my previous work and wondering if I was worthy of sharing. You know, so many women do that, don't we? We
Mm,
just
yeah.
question ourselves and challenge ourselves. And as a writer,
I think the older woman does. That's what we've been taught.
yeah,
And it's still in our DNA. It always will be. So
yeah,
what people are doing today is because of the speech, freedom of speech, we have to be very careful how
mm,
we approach our books today and what we actually put in them. Before, it was literally like open slather. And I really didn't. Some of the books I review, and that's one of the things I love to do is review books. They weren't particularly welcoming, I would say, to use a word. They didn't enhance my day. They didn't enhance my reading experience or what I wanted to know about the person. But because they said, would you review the book? And okay. So I think with today's author, it's too easy. It's just too easy. So that's when I get into a woman's bloodstream. And I love to say to them, tell me, when was your last memory? They might say 3 or 4. What were you doing? I was playing with a rope, playing hopscotch. And what does your 3 or 4-year-old do now? Oh, they play on their iPad. What's the difference? You were grounding yourself. You were out in the fresh air. Mum knew you were safe, but you were out with the other kids. You were playing. You were integrating yourself into the community, so to speak. You knew that mum was part of the community, and all the kids around the neighborhood, they knew your story. They knew you might have asthma. They knew you might not be able to jump rope really well. They knew things about you. Sure, we had our bullies, but they were fairly much controlled because mum always had her eye on you. She might be baking or doing whatever she did around the house. I always knew that mum had a hawk eye, and she'd be out there as quick as a flash if she thought something wasn't feeling right about. But it was very rare, very, very rare. So as children now, if we take the kids out to the park, and get them to run around, it's actually breathing oxygen into your body. It's getting, I see oxygen as words, and it fascinates me that I see, we live opposite a park, and I see mums out there with their kids on the swings, on the slides, but the mums are on the phone or on the iPad. It's not storytelling. It's not taking your child and saying, see that bird up there? That's well, you'd know what a galah was. That's a galah. Do you know the story of a galah? And telling the story of a galah, telling the story of Jiminy Cricket. Now, there's nothing wrong with that story, but this is how I learnt what crickets do, about Pinocchio and all those different children's stories that we had. They taught us. They were teaching tools.
Yes. My
And we've
favorite
got
were
to learn.
my favorite were the Enid Blyton books.
Yes.
Love them. Famous Five and Secret Seven.
Oh, yes.
My dad actually built a little, I'm the oldest of 5, but Dad built a little treehouse for me so I could go up there and read my books while, to stop the others annoying me. And I would, I think back to those days, like your imagination was so powerful. I could just absolutely absorb the love stories about kids doing stuff together. And I hear what you're saying now. I have a granddaughter. And we bought all the Possum Magic books, and we bought, we're buying books with the stories. Kept all the a lot of books from the kids' era, but when we moved, we had to let them go. And I think that's really important for us, generation, to keep those old-fashioned stories alive.
Yeah, it is. It's very much important to keep those stories alive. It really is important. What's more important is to bring the grandchild into your circle and put them on your knee. And I know it's frowned on these days to put a child on your knee, but I still put my great grandchildren on my knee and I'll read to them. And, and they get fidgety and I say, no, quiet now, quiet. This is something really good, and I get them into the book so you can feel the pace of the book. And also, I remember mum reading me stories and always stopping at the most important part. And I just get so annoyed to say tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day. So, yeah, I truly believe that woman, this more senior woman, we've kept very, very quiet. Now, my mum was, she was in quite a few different places in New Zealand. She was part of a few different clubs, and it was all about stand up for women, speak out loud. So was my grandmother, and so was my auntie. And I guess that the DNA's passed on to me because I truly believe that I'm not after women that want to get angry and want to make the world follow their rules. Because when you write a book, it's a soft flow. It's a flowing thing that happens. Sure, you can start to fasten the pace and put your anger into it. This is what happened. This is what upset me. But you need to learn that the waft and the weave of how to tell a story. And that's why I love to mentor.
Lovely. Oh, that's fantastic. Tell me about these. What's the Gold Titan Awards that you have won 8 of? What are they?
Gold Titan is a company in the USA that will review your book, and they have a lot of, what would you call it, readers. They have a lot of employed readers, and they are experts. They are truly experts at their craft. So
Mm.
they take your book apart again, looking at the flow of the book, the actual story. Can I take you down, right down, and then take you right back up again? And that's what a good story does. It takes you up to the top of the mountain, then leads you back down again, takes you up again. So they look at that side of things, and if they think that your book is really exciting, they will give you a Gold Star Award. They're not, you know, I see about 30 gold stars coming up every day. That Titan always alert me that there's all these gold stars coming forward. But you look at the book and you think they deserved it because they
Mm.
told such an excellent story. But it's not something that's given out lightly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So who are your favorite authors? Do you have favorite authors that you love to read because they're good storytellers? And I'm talking about, the
Yeah, I do. There's one of my bookcase. It's called The Red Tent. I don't know if anyone's. It's about the biblical story of Ruth, and it's about woman. And now I can see it, but I can't quite see the author's name. I'm looking sideways. The other book I do like is she's a local lady, Tina Raffia Mulligan. She writes lovely stories as well. Karen Weaver. She's a very modern day writer, but she's she's in to philosophy. But I do enjoy some of her books. I do like the way Wilbur Smith started off. I like his last book. It got too sexual for me. But when he started off on his adventures, it actually reminded me of the Enid Blyton days when I would read, the adventures, the five that went on the adventures, because I've always been an adventurer. So his books I do like. Catherine Twofoot, I do like her as well. But they have to be. I do about 5 book reviews a week. And each book I think, oh, I really, really love this author. I really think you've done well. So I have heaps of authors that I really like.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so a woman is listening to this, and I've got a number of women I know will be listening who have recently retired or how would they get started writing their story? What would you recommend to them to start writing their story? How do they do it?
I'm asked that question so much. How do you start? And my answer was, well, I'm a great one for pencil and paper. I really am.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's a great TV watcher, sports, anything to do with sports, he's watching it. And, I'm in my office, I can hear the humdrum coming down the corridor. And I often just sit in my office, not even with no electronics, no digital going, and I'll sit here and I'll write. Because I think it's important that we keep the hand to brain going, first of all. And my answer to your question would be, why not put yourself in the third party and just try the first sentence, once upon a time, and then start writing about yourself. That doesn't have to be published. It doesn't have to do anything, but it's the beginning to the entry of your story.
Lovely. Yeah, I remember a friend of mine saying to me once with my first book that I was collaborating and I'd sort of stopped telling a story. And she said, the reader is hungry. We want to know. We want to know, as you said, top to the bottom and then back up again. It's like this arc, isn't it? And I know I'm reading it, I've really gotten into fiction again this year because I was always personal development or business books. And then I thought, I need a bit of just creativity in my life. And so I've really gotten into fiction. And it does, is there's somewhere where your brain goes when you kind of you're reading a fiction story and you're creating the characters in your head, what they don't look like. And then you'll see the book come on the movie and go, they didn't look like that in my head. That's not how that person looked. And it's that wondrous ability to step. I know my daughter has just had a baby and she said, I've just got into anything about wizards, Mum, at the moment. I was loving everything about wizards and, this sort of genre. I remember when Harry Potter first came out and she was in year 7 at the time and all of the year 7 kids suddenly started reading. It was amazing to see that come back. And again, it reminded me of the Enid Blyton days because I was like that at school. I always had a book under my desk reading. I loved it. But I think the fiction takes you to a place that is a little bit, well, not. It's really good for your brain.
I actually find that fiction, if I'm having a stressful day for some reason, and I can, always feel the stress in here first, and other people may feel, I always get it in here. If I start reading, pick up a fiction book, and I will do it on purpose, the stress goes. I've forgotten it. And I'm into the story and I've created that character, so what I do and when I'm writing, I Anything sexual, I will take you to the garden gate. The rest is up to your imagination. If it's about a character, I will describe it so far. And then I think, no, I'll leave it there. Because does he have one leg or two? I'll make you think. I make you put your imagination into that character. When I was teaching writing, when I've gone around all the different shires around Australia, and I run book clubs and taught how to write, I get them to dress their characters in writing. Tell me what your character looks like. Okay, he's tall, he's skinny, he's gaunt. What's he wearing? And they look at me. We hadn't thought about that part. Okay. Has he got teeth? Describe what he looks like. Are the teeth aged? Is he fresh? Is he young? Tell me if he's built like a body. What's his muscular body look like? I want to know all the ins and outs of their character so that they've literally got this character by the throat and they're squeezing the life out of them. They can see something that it's creation, it's imagination, and it's important.
Oh, it really is. It's so true. We've got a lot of little toddlers in our world at the moment. My daughter's friends had babies last year. And I'm really loving how these young parents are focusing so much on books with their children.
Yeah.
It's almost like a total turnaround. No screen time. They won't let them have any screen time. And we were looking after a little boy a couple of weeks ago. And I said to his mum, I'll go get him. He's about 19 months old. I'll wake him up. And one by one, 15 books later, we were still sitting fascinated by. I thought, what a gift his mum and dad are giving him.
Yeah.
At this age, that he would much rather sit as a little 6 and books he will just keep bringing them. He just loved, and his mum's bilingual, so they have half French books and half English books, which is just wondrous to watch. My goodness. And I think isn't that the most wonderful gift a parent can give their child? Love of reading. It takes you so far, not just fiction, but also having the ability to stay focused and be concentrating on something for a long period of time. Did your mother, did she encourage you to read, or was it stories more that you were kind of making up in your head?
Mum had all sorts of books. In fact, the very first book she ever bought me was one about Princess Margaret and her story. That was the first book. And I was be about 7. And she bought it to me because Mum and Dad were very religious. And so I was brought up literally speaking biblical words. Like there'd be different words in the Bible that other people couldn't pronounce, like Corinthians, Leviticus. And I'd be quoting scriptures. At the age of 7, I could quote scriptures.
So
Bit of a show off.
Correct.
And I would correct people if they didn't say it. I said, that's wrong. You've said it wrong. Mum didn't stop me, but then I think she realised that this child needs to get out in the world a bit more and realise that there are other stories out there, because our whole bookcase. And then I discovered Enid Blyton. She gave me Princess Margaret's story, and I had to read it to her and say, like, there was the realm of Henry VIII. I went right back in history, had to read that book. And then she thought, I think she's old enough to handle the fairy stories. And no, they're not real, but enjoy the story. And that's what it's all about. Enjoying the ride.
Oh, yeah. Kez, what drives you? I mean, you're in your mid-70s, and, I know a lot of people in mid-70s are just, they're kind of giving up and trouble. What drives you to keep doing what you're doing? And
I see the joy. I just see the joy when people are published. As I said, not always through me, but I'm an author. I'm a published author. Wow. I'm a yeah. And the more they say it, the more it sits. It's like watching a crown grow out of their head. I'm a published author. And the more they say it, the more proud they are of themselves. They've managed to tell their story. And what I say to them, it's not just in words, because we turn them into ebooks. They're in libraries. I managed to get some of my books spread globally. And it's watching the woman grow with confidence. They're not just, my name's Hilda Blogs and I live in Nine Road and I have 5 grandchildren and I go knitting to a knitting club. It's not that anymore. It's published author and my word's out there. And I just think if we tell our story, imagine in 100 years' time, that story being retold.
Yes.
And they're thinking, you didn't really have to push a button to do the washing, did you? Because this is what we do. And I look at my mother handling the old mangle washing machine.
Yeah.
No wonder you never went to a gym. You didn't
Yeah.
need to.
That's exactly right. I mean, when I arrived in Vancouver, I was standing in the shared laundries, the apartments here with no laundries. Anyway, I remember standing there one day, and I was the hardest thing I had to do was lift the washed clothes and stick it in the dryer next to me, and then push another button. You know, probably your mother was the same as my mum. Mondays were always all day. They were doing the washing,
Yeah.
like the sheets and the towels, and the washed
Yeah.
and put through the wringer. For those who don't know what we're talking about, wash them, put it through a wringer, rinse them, put them through the wringer, and then put them in the and walk them out to the line.
Sure.
But that went on all day. You're right. They didn't need to go to the gym. There was so much activity in their day. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, how we're doing less, but we're less healthy. You know.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, Mum, Sundays was our day. Mondays was bread baking day. Tuesdays was Mum would make a big soup to see us through for our lunches for the week. And when you think, I said that too much. Did you eat the same soup for the whole week? I said, yeah. Nothing wrong with it.
No,
Nothing wrong.
pea and ham soup used to sit on our stove all week and just come home, heat it up. We never went in the fridge. Somehow we didn't die.
We
Just
didn't have a fridge. We had an icebox.
yeah, that's right. We
I
just
mean,
kept
New
bringing
Zealand was 10 years behind everybody else, sure. But, Mum had an icebox. We never got food poisoning from our food. Mum had a big garden. If you wanted something to cook and eat, you went to the garden and made yourself something from the garden. The next door neighbour had a farm, so he killed his cattle and we bought the meat off him. The milkman delivered the milk. Mum wouldn't have anything to do with the bread. Even though it was quite healthy, it was true white flour. She'd bake her own. The biscuit tins were always filled. We had a very abundant life, but we were very grounded and we were taught to respect.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I've often told this story, if we got into trouble at school, you shouldn't say a word because you would get into trouble at home.
No.
There was no question. There was no question of whether because I wrote with nuns, whether they were right or wrong, and some of them were terrible. But you'd never come home and tell my mother I got into trouble. Holy moly, that, because I've been worse trouble at home, not like it is
That's
today.
right.
I mean, I think, and you were saying that these are the stories that need to be told for kids that are growing up in this digital age and everything's turned. And I see an actual trend back to that type of life. We've talked about that a lot, getting a house that we can put a garden in. So our grandchildren grow up feeling the dirt and watching it grow. I think that's so incredibly important. I want to just ask you this because I ask all my guests, if you could say something to your 30-year-old self, if you go back to when you were 30 years, I mean, here you are 40 plus years down the track and everything you've done. But if you could tell your 30-year-old self something, what would you tell her?
Learn to love yourself.
Oh, love that. Yes.
Because at 30, I certainly didn't love myself. Didn't even know who I was. I was a mum and I'd been divorced and remarried by then. I was married off. My parents were very religious, as I said. Dad literally married me off at 17. I was a mother by 19. So I didn't know who I was at 30 years old. I did not know who I was. I was a mum. I was a wife. What else is there? That was it.
Yeah.
So if I could go back and give that woman the biggest hug, I feel quite tearful about it. I say, just learn to love yourself, appreciate yourself. You're a beautiful woman. You've actually created life. We're the only species that create life. I have given life to 4 children. And they're all beautiful kids. Love yourself, love your skills, love your body. And I'm not talking about going to a spa and having a facial every week. I'm talking about taking note of like breast examination. We were never taught that. I'm talking about if you feel things aren't right in your emotional life, seek help. Love yourself enough that you are going out there and you get the confidence. I mean, I had to learn to do this in my 50s when all the kids had left home and I had time for me. So gratefully, it wasn't too late because I am who I am now. But I had to recognize that I had skills that I hadn't even tapped into. 30, I was too busy being a mother.
Yeah.
Being a wife, being a good, to me, being a good wife, well, what does that encompass? I literally have looked after 2 men, 2 grown men in my life, and brought them up as well because they left their family home. We got married. The first marriage fell apart. The second marriage, we've been together 40 plus years, but it was like, if I know how to cook spuds, then why don't you know how to cook spuds? So I had to literally train 5 children, counting hubby. That's a
True.
skill. That's an
True.
absolute skill that we as women don't recognize the power that we have as women. We are educators. And even if it's in story world, we educate.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's so wise. You have any other wise things you want to leave with us today?
I'm out of wise things now.
Well, you just the way you share that, you can tell the way that you're able to write. You understand the process of telling a story. Beautifully said. I just love that. And that's so true. At 30, we don't know who we are. We're still judging ourselves and trying to figure it out. And I mean, you probably do it like me with having a grandchild. When you realize you have no part in growing this baby. As the parents, you just, okay, well, they're growing fingers and toes and toenails, and they come out this, and it's nothing about you. You didn't do anything. Out pops this child, and then we judge ourselves, and we judge if we're doing the right thing, and if we just learn to love ourselves and trust our intuition, there's a lot of angst that goes along with that.
I actually feel really sorry for modern mothers because when I had babies, we had such a thing, and it might have been here in Australia, and I don't know if you watched the program Midwives, but we actually had that in our lives. We actually had them.
Yeah.
They would come around, and if you were tired, they would rock the baby while you had a quick nap. They would take the baby in the pram for a walk. They'd come around in twos so one could administer caring for you if you needed it. The baby would be weighed and looked after, and you had a little notebook. And I was so proud of that notebook because I could watch my baby grow. 4 ounces, a pound here, 6 ounces there. I watched my baby take its first steps, and it was all noted. I've still got the books, all 4 little midwife books. I've still got them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was so proud that I was part of it. And knowing that the women today don't have that, it's got to be hard on a new mum
Oh,
and
well,
what's expected of her.
my mother used to say to me, "Stop reading so many books," when I was pregnant with my son and my daughter. And now I say to my daughter, "Get off Google, get off."
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think the pressure on young parents today, because there's so much information, and information is often just opinions,
That's
somebody's
right.
opinion. And if you learn to trust yourself and look in the eyes of that baby, I mean, we didn't have midwives like that in Australia. I mean, I don't remember them. My mother used to talk about mothercraft nurses. Don't listen to them.
I think it's the same thing, mothercraft. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is, that women are in their 20s and 30s and raising babies and still trying to raise themselves, just trying to figure it all out. It's confusing
That's
now
right.
with social media, and it's a tough life. Because I've loved this conversation with you. This is just
Thank you.
absolutely brilliant. I'm going to put in the show notes below how you can reach out to Kez and sharing just if you're somebody who thinks, you know what, I should be writing my story. I've got some things to say. Reach out and speak to you, and do you run courses? Do you run programs where women can have some time
No,
with?
I used to, but not anymore. But what I have got going, Sally, is I've got a new anthology up 2026, and I want the wisdom of the woman to come through in that book. It's not a story about this is what happened to me, fell down a scrape my knee or whatever like that, or even more violent than that. I don't that we've had enough. And all the anthologies that I've had in 24 and 25, it was the mental health problems, violence problems. I want the wisdom. I want the salt. It's called Salt and Sage. And I want the sage to come through. I want salt means preserved. So I want the preservation of the wisdom to come.
Beautiful. And that's what we are at this age. We're wise women, and in this world that's obsessed with youth, it is the wise one. In Indigenous cultures, the wise woman is revered. She's the one that used to hold everything together when everybody go off trying to find an animal to kill for everybody to eat. It was the wise women, the older women, that held the camp together, that got everybody working together. She's an amazing individual, and in the work that I do, it's asking women to recognize that you are wise, you are intuitive. Reach out to Kez if that's where you feel that you want to do. And I just have loved this conversation. Thank you so much.
And so I'd love to have your story in the anthology. Go into the website, see what it's all about, and write me your story.
We'd love to. I'd love to. Thank you, Kez, so much. And
Thank
then,
you.
as I said, all Kez's details are in the show notes below. And I've just loved this conversation. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mid-Life Reimagined Life Beyond Menopause podcast as much as I do. I love hearing the stories of these women who are reimagining their lives and really stepping to their own power at this stage in their life. Please remember to subscribe so you stay up to date for a new episode every week. And please share this with somebody you know who may need a little bit of inspiration around truly living her life post-menopause. I'll see you next week.